For this video, we will be going through the Mac client installation. This is when you want to end up connecting the Mac to your on-premise installation to be able to end up doing pop-ups, either for universal driver options or for various other options such as choosing cost centers or identification. So first things first is we want to end up going to the uniFLOW server and grabbing the installer from the resources page. Usually you can do that by going to the uniFLOW server /pw client or /mom. Log in and then hit the resources button to download it. I've already gone through and downloaded it, so we're going to go ahead and unpack it, mount the DMG file, and go through the installation. And when we first try to go through this, the Mac is going to end up prompting you stating that we're an unidentified developer. So if you go underneath System Preferences, go to Security and Privacy, you can have it open it anyways. So we click that. It'll then allow us to open the software and proceed with the installation. Then ask for the password to end up being able to install the application. And that's just your local account password. And we have it installed. So relatively quick for the install process. Once we have it installed, we can launch it by going to Applications, uniFLOW, Mac Client, or holding down the Command key, hitting spacebar, and then you can type in Mac Client, if I spell it right. And when we first launch it, it's going to say that it doesn't have any default values configured. So we hit OK on this, it's going to give us one more prompt. And then underneath the print server here is where we're going to want to put our uniFLOW server. And let me check my server name real quick just to make sure I have it correct. And nope, it's 2020 LTS. So one thing to note here is when you're typing in the print server, you usually want to use fully qualified domain name. There's a couple different reasons why. One, the Mac usually needs the fully qualified to be able to resolve the DNS the DNS name to IP address. Usually don't have that with just the NetBIOS name. Usually they can't resolve it on the Mac. Another reason you want to use the FQDN here instead of IP address is oftentimes the IP address is not on the certificate. And I'll explain why that's important later. After we get this set up, we'll go through the certificate installation. So we're going to use fully qualified here. That's the best practice that you want to use in your environments is fully qualified. We're going to go ahead and save it. Now that's going to save it to the defaults, but it's not actually going to populate it within our client here. So we actually need to quit it, reload it, and you see we don't get that error message now that we have information populated. But now you can see we have uniFLOW 2020 LTS.uniflow.local, which is my uniFLOW server. So we're actually we're done in regards to the Mac client setup. Now one thing that I was talking about earlier was the certificate. So when we first have it installed, what happens is the Mac client is unable to connect. And I don't know if you caught it there, but you'll see it here. So down here, it tries to connect over HTTP. Can't happen because the Mac will actually try to connect with HTTPS because that's what uniFLOW tells it to do. And when it tries to connect with HTTPS, you're going to see here the default TLS trust evaluation failed. So what's happening here is the SSL connection is not being able to complete, and that's because the Mac does not trust the server that we're trying to connect to over SSL. So the way that we remedy this is we actually have to install the SSL certificate, if you're using the self-signed certificate, onto the Mac. If you're using a third-party certificate, like via GoDaddy or VeriSign, so on and so forth, this trust issue is not going to occur because it's going to have an inherent trust for those third-party providers, for most of them, the ones that are well-known. Because those certificate files are built into the keychain for the Mac, so it'll inherently trust those. But with self-signed, it doesn't have anything to verify that that certificate is valid and whether or not that server's a good location to connect to. So we actually have to trust it manually. So what we're going to end up doing here then is go underneath Safari, And we're going to pull up the uniFLOW server. So we're going to go, you can see it's pre-populated here. There's my server name. And like I said before, we go to mom. And it's going to show here that, you know, the certificate's not trusted, that the server might be impersonating the server, or the server might be impersonating the location you're trying to connect to because the certificate isn't trusted. So we hit show details here, and then we can go to the website, and it's actually going to tell us to modify. It's modifying the certificate right now so that we modify it so that it has that trust for SSL connectivity. So now you can see, you know, we don't have an error up here. So you can see here, this is actually our certificate. Go underneath trust, you can see here now it's actually always trusted for SSL, which is what we want. Normally I also have people go into their keychain and modify the trust so it's always trusted for everything, code signing and IPsec specifically, as I have had some issues with this in the past. So I'll usually go through and have them change this to always trust by opening up their keychain. The keychain is actually located underneath applications, utilities, and keychain access, and that's how I brought that up. I have it down here automatically, but you can bring it up and then look at the actual certificate. You can verify it's the same one by going here, show certificate, and making sure that these two match, which they do. And then make sure that we have this set to always trust. Now when we close it, it'll ask us to enter our passwords so that I can save these to the keychain. If I put in the right password. And we're done. So now we shouldn't be seeing this SSL TLS connection error within our client logs. If we go down here, you can see here MAC client TLS handshake complete. Now that means that our client is now connected to the uniFLOW server and we can generate our pop-ups.